Welcome to the Hacking Your Health podcast with Ben Canning and Dave Kennedy. Two guys heading out to hack body, mind, business, and beyond. We are here to provide a single source, bullshit-free guide to understanding your body and how you can live better for longer.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Just before we get into this week's podcast, I'd like to take a second to say two things. Number one, thanks for tuning in once again. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for every listen, every download, every watch. Secondly, if you can take time to subscribe to wherever you listen to or watch us, it would be greatly appreciated, and it would do a lot for us and the show. Thanks. Enjoy this week's episode. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I am Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is Hacking Your Health podcast.
So it's been
It's
been really, the audience doesn't know this, but it's been like 2 weeks since we actually recorded. So we got a lot to catch up on. It's going to be a powerhouse podcast. We got, disagreements with Andrew Huberman, the guest, one of the guests he had on. We have some controversies to discuss. It's going to be a wild, action-packed episode today.
I actually need to get the name of that guy because Dr. Andy Gilpin. Right. Anyway, yes, It is. Strap yourself in. Anyway, we'll catch up first. What's going on with you?
So things are good. I just finished up a deload couple of days. So I'm not gonna call it a deload week anymore because it's only a couple of days. And
you made it through again?
I made it through, but I have to admit to you on something that I did. And it's one of those things where it's like I'll do it and then ask for forgiveness later and then explain it.
Here's what happened.
And full disclosure, I was 100% honest on my check-in sheet. I didn't hide it, and I had full intentions of telling you after I did it. But I thought it would make.
So was I right? Was I right on what I spotted on your check-in? Because I spent about 10 minutes being like, "What have I missed?"
Yeah. So the elevated strain that you saw on it was what it would have been Tuesday, right? Tuesday or Monday. No, it'd been Tuesday. Was because I did go to Orange Theory on Tuesday on the deload, but there's a reason for it, and I just want to explain my rationality here. So I had to fly out Tuesday to do a leadership kickoff for like Binary Defense, to do a 2023 kickoff with our leadership team and stuff like that. And so I was going to fly out Tuesday, and then Tuesday and then Wednesday I was in meetings all day. So these 2 days I was going to be extremely sedentary, and I didn't want to sit there and not get anything in, no steps, nothing. There was going to be nothing, basically. So what I did is I went to Orange Theory, and I chilled and did a very relaxing run. Like my run was below my normal base pace. My push was below even my normal run pace, and I didn't do any all-outs, and I did really light weights. And it was just to get my heart rate up to go and get something in, because I knew for the next 2 days I wasn't going to be able to manage getting something in. So, and technically you said Wednesday I could do Orange Theory, but no lifting. And then I did lifting at night on Wednesday. So it just kind of got a little bit messed up, but I did feel like I did a good deload.
So I'm going to call bullshit because you said for 2 days that you'd be sedentary and sat still. As soon as you got off the flight on Wednesday, you went and lifted.
But no, that's not true. That's not true. I went home and hung out with my family for like 2 hours.
And then
I went downstairs to make sure that my gym was clean for the next morning. And then I did a full lift during that period of time. So I
fell and then started doing some bicep curls, and then it got out of hand.
I couldn't help myself. Well, I was there and I was like checking everything out. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, technically I could just do like a little bit of like back and biceps. It's a quick lift, and then it turned into a 2 hour session, and then
So the next thing I'm going to call bullshit on is, if you said that you went light at Orange Theory, why is your strain higher than it usually is on those days? It was 16.9.
So in full disclosure, Whoop sometimes will record certain it will. I'm serious. Like the one day I got like a 21. I didn't do any extra activities. It just happened to like calculate it differently. So if you look, I'll send you my screenshot from the Orange Theory session. It was like 20% lower than or 20 minutes lower than I normally do in the elevated heart rate section. So I did go light on that day, but I did do a lot of like walking in the airports and things like that to get to things. But I don't know. It wasn't that big of an elevated thing, but I did not push myself hard at all that day. I went in chill. In fact, I didn't even take any pre-workout that day. So to put it in perspective. So I really tried to chill.
Okay, so you're justifying the whole thing by not taking pre-workout. So technically it's not a lift or exercising. If
you don't take pre-workout, it's not actually an exercise at that point. So like, it's just, I don't make the rules up, man. I don't make the rules up, but listen, I'll fully own it and take punishment for it. I think the punishment should be boys should get split squats. No, boys should get split squats.
You think boys should get split squats because you didn't do your deload properly?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, that's good.
How many?
I mean, I think he's got to do like 4 sets of 15.
4 sets of 15 each leg?
Yeah.
Okay, dude. I'll actually update the program right now.
All right, there we go. Good. But sorry, apologize. I had an idea and I was like, hey, I'm gonna bounce it off you afterwards. And then what? I was actually gonna tell you beforehand. I'm like, I'd make good for the podcast, so that's why I didn't say anything yet.
Okay, but aside from that, your deload week was good, and now you're back to training. Everything's okay. The world is right again.
Yeah. In fact, it's amazing how much. And for those that know what a deload week is, if you are lifting for a long period of time, and usually the recommendation is anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks. So that would be 2 to 3 months. You typically want to go through a deload exercise where you're either doing a smaller percentage of lighter weight, still the same reps, but lighter weight, or just kind of cold turkey it for a few days to give your body and your nervous system time to recover. A lot of science and studies show that, especially if you're hitting plateaus and stuff like that, or you're just feeling, dragging ass, you're not recovering properly, deloads can really make a big difference in your body recovery and things like that. So, and I've been very good at telling Ben when I need deloads because I can feel it. I know it's time for that. And it's one of those hardest things for me to admit, but I will go and do it. And so, other than a deload, it was very good. Had a good time at DC. Definitely had a Taco Bell run at 1 o'clock in the morning while I was there, but fitted with my calorie count. I only had 1 soft taco supreme, 240 calories. And, it was all good to go. So it's been a good week. How about you, man?
Things are good. I have had I don't like the word busy. I've had a lot of calls this week. So essentially this week is week 10 for the Hacks group. And what I wanted to do with them all is have a one-to-one call, catch up what they sort of thought was good about the past 10 weeks, the success that they had, what the struggles were, and essentially what we need to do and change and focus on moving into the next block. So it was good to actually speak to them all individually. And it was very rewarding for me to sort of see how much people are getting from the program and how they're actually doing. So it has been quite hectic, and a lot of calls back to back, but all very good stuff. Some very funny calls. And I think the overarching thing that I got from the majority of them was, and I guess I sort of had planned this to an extent, was the initial block was obviously starting everything on hard mode. So we started when it was the holidays, when it was Thanksgiving, when it was Christmas. So, literally the most difficult time of year to start anything. But for me, it was more about them laying the foundations, building the habits, building the behaviors, to then when we move into this block, we're going to start to really test the limits and push things to see what we can actually achieve. And everybody seems to be on board with that. Everybody's really happy with where they're at. So it's really cool to see. I still have a couple of calls next week, and then I have a lot of programming and planning to do, but it's been a good, very rewarding week from a work perspective. Also, training has been good. My calories are at 2,750, and I feel like I'm really finding my feet at that calorie level. And it's funny. And I was talking to Luke the other day.
We're matched on calories, by the way.
That was intentional.
We're calorie brothers.
You need to remember, I'm in control of what your calories are. But yeah, I was talking to Luke the other day, and I increased his calories. And it's funny whenever you go from that, like being in a deficit and being so routine with it, to like now you have all these extra calories. It's like, what do I do with these? But on the other side of it, like, and Luke will definitely own up to this, like, it wouldn't be hard to hit 2,700 calories before, but now it's like, oh shit, how do I get this in and what way do I fit it? So it's an interesting sort of, again, process to go through, but I feel good on it. Sessions are good. Starting to find my groove with the new workout block. So yeah, all is good. All is well on this side.
I want to hit on that, and I want to double click on that really quick here.
Oh,
for 2
okay,
seconds.
right, gotta go. Bye.
I got so much shit for that from a lot of people. Like people are like, "Oh, I'm going to double click on that." Send me direct messages at Facebook, but I was like, "Damn it, I should never." It's like when people found I had a fear of clowns. Like I just got clown stuff like for like 5 years, and I finally got desensitized to clowns. Like clowns mean nothing to me anymore. But anyways. Let's go into that subject here for a second. So we have
to be careful what we say because people will just
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm getting it from folks all the time. Like I was talking to somebody that is on the Cavs that listens to our podcast all the time, and he's like, "Hey Dave, just wanted to double click on something real quick." I'm like, "Son of a bitch!" And he's like, "I listen to the podcast obviously." I'm like, "Damn it!" So, anyways, and by the way, I've been listening to Dr. Atia quite a bit, and he must have heard me, or like because I responded back to his thing, so he must actually pay attention because I haven't heard any double clicks since I started complaining about it. So I'm really happy that he changed it because I can listen to his podcast now. But one thing I want to hit there really fast is, so what's interesting about what people struggle with on the calorie count side of the house is the initial pain and exertion that it takes to get used to calories. And so if your bodies are used to eating, 4,000 calories a day and you go down drastically to 2,000 calories a day, you're going to be absolutely miserable, right? And I think what you can do to kind of taper that a bit is slowly go down in calories over time to where your body really doesn't recognize it. Or, if you just go through the efforts of doing it and you have the discipline, that calorie thing will become normal routine for you. Your body will figure out how to operate that way. You're not going to have the hunger and cravings. It's really weird. I would say, during this cutting phase, when, we dropped calories really fast and it was intentional, I said, listen, I want to push this hard. I want to try it, see if I can do it for myself. And we almost got to the 220 goal. I came to 222, by the way, which
we still have time. We
really
still have
lean.
Time.
I was really lean. It was really awesome. So, when the thing is reporting 3.7% body fat, I'm like, it's not right, but that's pretty low. So, but
I also, just the total tangent as well. Yeah. I want to point out that so you have the in-body scanner that does everything properly, and you don't trust this machine, so you go to the other machine, you go to the other machine, you go to the other machine, you're like, I know what I'll do. I'll order this caliper that's like probably $10 off Amazon to see if it's legit. I'm like, doesn't make any sense, but yeah, I get it.
And the caliper gave me the exact same readings. I was like, son of a bitch, and then I'm like, am I doing the caliper wrong? I'm watching videos on it. I'm like, so I tried as best I can to get to it. And I even emailed,
no.
Well, I even emailed, there's this, so even more accurate than a DEXA scan are actually water submersion body tanks. A lot of schools have these. And so I actually emailed Tri-C, which is a local college here, that has these body tanks. And so they're coming out with their February schedule. So I'm actually going to go do a body tank study to see, just to be curious, because it also, they'll also get your VO2 max, your, a lot of other things, cardiovascular health. So it's kind of a neat thing. It's like $25, nice. Which is really awesome to get, that level of detail. So I'll probably do something like that soon. But anyways, the calorie thing is where most people struggle with because we're all used to heavy, caloric intake because we have food readily available to me. Right now I can just reach over to my right and I have a delicious salad with, chicken and everything else. But, and I literally got it magically delivered to my door via DoorDash, so, but when we're used to that type of calorie count, when we're dieting, there's two big mistakes that I see. One, you don't give yourself long enough to get adjusted to the calories. And two, you're doing too hard of a cut on calories that your body just goes into like extreme reserve mode. So, what you want to figure out is what is my total daily energy expenditure? What is maintenance for my total daily energy expenditure? So, and you can do that on our site. If you go to wehack.health, there's a resources section there. It'll calculate that for you. And then, you want to kind of refine that. It's just an estimate, but start to shave, 100, 200 calories off, every so often until you get to your desired weight loss regime. But I'll tell you, like this cut here at first, when I dropped those calories, I was hungry all the time because I was at, 3,000 calories or something like that, or 3,500 calories. It was a lot. And so I dropped all the way down and, I was hungry for probably the first 3 weeks. And after that, I started getting used to it. I started dropping some more calories, hungry a little bit, got used to it. And I can say at the end of it, when I was, at 1900 calories, I wouldn't be full really ever, but I was never starving. I was never starving for food. I wasn't doing the food channel stuff like you were, but, it was one of those things I got used to it. Now that I'm at 2750, I'm like, oh man, I got like so much room to play with. I can have like a bag of pretzels now. I can, go get a taco, instead of a salad, or, instead of just getting a chicken breast, I can get a chicken breast with, sides on it. So, it gives you a little bit more flexibility to eat what you want to. And it takes a little bit adjusting to get to 2750 as well, all the way to 3,000 to 4,000. At 4,000, I was like, I'm tired of eating. I don't want to eat anymore. These ups and downs that we go through, you get used to them, your body adjusts them. You just have to give yourself time, and you have to have the dedication to get to that point.
Yeah. The biggest struggle that I see is, the best way that I can describe it, the best analogy is if you think about your calories as a budget. So if you think about like finances and budget, you can spend your calories well, or you can spend them like a total asshole. So if you spend them well and you have things that are sort of high volume, low calories, like really lean meats, plenty of veg, you can have a lot of food for whatever calorie amount that you're on. And, whenever I think the lowest my calories got to towards the end of last year was like 1,600. But I was able to fill it with quite a lot of food. Or you can spend them like a total asshole and have a Five Guys and have your calories done in one meal, and you'd be done. You'd be starving for the rest of the day. So the quality of your food will dictate the quantity, essentially. So, you can have high fat, really calorie dense meals that are like small, but high in calories that are going to use that up straight away. Things like processed foods will use those up quite quickly. And I've sort of started to try and be a little bit more in tune with what anybody, any client is doing to make sure that they are spending their calories in the correct way so that they're not hungry, because essentially while feeling hungry is good to an extent, it will lead to some shit show along the way. Spend your calories in the right way is definitely an important way to do it.
Yep. And I also want to hit on congratulations to all of the Hacks crew and the BC Fam crew for all of the successes that you're having. And it's, and I saw your schedule. I mean, you are grinding at all of this, going through the check-ins and keeping people informed. But, what's really cool is when you send me a message, you're like, dude, I just had the most amazing call. This person is just killing it. And, it's awesome to have an impact in people and to be able to kind of change your life and get them on the right track, and seeing that actual transformation happen. It's gotta be amazing. And I see all the time too on social media, I got a couple hits, because of you, Dave, I was doing this and that. And all of a sudden I've dropped 40 pounds and I'm at the right track and I'm doing awesome. So it's really cool to see these folks having a lot of success. And the Discord server has never been more active, more popular. We just did some restructuring around it. You can subscribe to certain topics that you're interested in: women's health, men's health, scientific research, that type of stuff. So, we're getting a lot more active and we're having a lot more activity on the Discord server too. So it's been really awesome to see all of that come together. But most importantly, the only reason we're here is because we're making a difference. And I think that's the cool part about all this, right? And kudos to you, what you've been able to build with both those programs and the success you're having with those folks. It's life-changing, right?
Yeah, it's such, yes, sometimes it does feel like, it doesn't even really, yes, okay, sometimes I'm busier than others and whatever, but like, it's maybe similar to yourself. Like, it doesn't necessarily feel like work. It doesn't feel like a chore. Like, I enjoy speaking to clients. I enjoy seeing clients progress in their check-ins. Even if clients aren't progressing or having a hard time, I enjoy problem solving with them. And I enjoy sort of being able to overcome the barriers, and then seeing weeks down the line, that thing that they were struggling with that was a shit show is no longer a shit show. Like, that to me is what it's all about. And I'm not going to take any credit at all for rearranging the Discord. You did the whole thing, but and think in terms of like other things that we have got.
We strategized on how to do it. So, and by the way, was it Lily that had the suggestion to break against the pillars? So yeah. So kudos to Lily on that one.
I feel like she did more work in it than I did, but it was a great idea. It was a great idea, and sometimes you just need somebody else with a different set of eyes to look on it. But yeah, for me, and I know for you, like the biggest thing is just making a difference. And I guess I should mention I'm going to do that webinar on Friday. So this will go out on Tuesday. So next Friday is the 27th.
You totally need to get a link out there, by the way.
Yes, I will have a link out there. The link will be in the show notes.
Okay.
So this will go out on Tuesday. On Friday, the 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing a webinar on how to lose your first 10 pounds. And even anybody who's already lost some weight, I think there'll be a lot of value in that. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to do one webinar.
You even have props. You even have props.
Do you know what? I'll actually share it here because not that many people will watch it on YouTube. I think a lot of people underestimate how much weight actually is, and they give themselves a hard time. And they're like, oh, it's been a month and I've only lost, 4 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds, whatever. So I ordered what 5 pounds of body fat looks like. Let me just grab it here. So this is a preview for the 41 people that listen or watch on YouTube. This is what 5 pounds, like.
That's so gross. Oh my God. That's crazy.
Isn't
That's so
it?
crazy.
Like that,
it's so crazy.
Like you think, oh, I've only lost 5 pounds. Like look how much that, and I'm a relatively
for
big
all the people
person.
that are hearing the rattling of the grocery bag sound on the, we apologize.
But like that, I'm a relatively big person. I've got big hands. Like, that is a lot. Like,
that's a lot.
Yeah. So
it's crazy to think too. Like I came from 248, dropped down to 222. That I really had that much body fat to lose in there.
Yeah.
That's what 20 some pounds, and that's like 5 of those. That's crazy.
It's insane.
Crazy.
It's absolutely insane. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that prop. I'm looking forward to doing the webinar. The link to join will be in the show notes.
And that's why I test, personally to me, again, whatever works best for your body and how you feel. But, that's why for me, I personally attest to low fat macronutrients because, you look at the storage ratio, when you eat fat, if you don't use it, 100% of that is going to your fat. Like it's getting stored as fat. Whereas carbohydrates has to convert pretty heavily to fat. And whereas protein extremely heavily and almost very little percentage of that actually converts to fat. So high protein, high carbohydrates diets, are typically the ones that are most successful at, keeping fat off your body, even though obviously if you're sitting there eating candy bars all day long and really easily processed sugars, those can convert fairly easily to fats. But again, I digress on that. But again,
but even
crazy to think that.
That is insane. Like it surprised me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get the 10 pounds one delivered, but I can imagine it's fucking huge. But yeah, even for me, like increasing my calories, I think my calories increased by about, I'm going to say 400. For me, I would go straight away to carbs and protein. So my protein's probably sitting at around between 260 and 280 grams at the minute. And then the rest carbs and like usually under 60 grams of fat. And I find that works best when I feel great in the gym. Like I feel my lifts going up. Yeah. And the one thing, and this will be our perfect segue to the conversation. The one thing that I did recognize or appreciate in the conversation with Andrew Huberman and Dr. Andy Galpin that I just don't like. They talked about the weight training and the search for the pump almost gives you like a preview of what your physique looks like. I really like that analogy of like whenever you have the pump and you feel full, like that's a preview of the results you can achieve if you keep working down. And that's potentially a reason why people favor weight and resistance training or weightlifting or whatever it is. Like I like the way they describe that.
Well, it's funny because I always make the joke, like I wish I could look like I do right now. Like I did a picture earlier this week on Twitter and my arms look fucking massive. I got a censor button too if I ever need to. If I ever swear, I could be like, anyways, so
you're a bit off.
Yeah, it's a little delayed. We got to figure out the delay and then hitting the sensor going back. Anyway, but I was like, man, my arms look so big, and I'm just like, yes, and then like 45 minutes later, I'm like, man, my arms are so small. No. So the pump definitely has a major impact. And it's funny because like, people see those pictures on, social media and then they'll see you in person. They're like, hey, you're a lot smaller than I thought. I'm like, well, first of all, that's the worst thing you could ever say to me, by the way. But second, that's one, great lighting. That is awesome, pump from a workout. And yes, it's a preview to what hopefully someday I could be looking like that all the time, maybe. So,
I'm going to go and do some push-ups and bicep curls and come back.
yeah. Right back. That's why we do the disco pump when we go out for date night. It's like, hey, we got to look a little bit bigger to get that pump going. So, but talking about the podcast with Dr. Andy Galpin, which came up, it got released January 18th on the Huberman Labs podcast. I always get excited about these ones because
we're so up to date. That is good for us. That's only 2 days ago.
It is.
We are up to date on Andy Huberman.
I feel like the ones that are like centric on like physical fitness and stuff like that, or ways to hack your body, like those are the ones I'm most interested in. A lot of the ones are like, hey, how to optimize like even like sleep protocols I'd be interested in, but it's like focusing on your consciousness. I'm like, I'm not gonna listen to that one. Sorry, but
to be fair, I did, and I know this is total tangent again. I did listen to the creativity one with Rick Rubin, and it was very. I would consider myself a creative person, so it was very interesting, and it was a lot of like, nothing has an answer. I was like, halfway through it, and like, this is a total mind fuck. It's like, we only see blew because it's beside his. I'm like, I can't get my head around this. But it was cool just to sort of see someone of that level and the stuff that obviously he's been able to achieve, sort of trying to link things back to the scientific side of things. And it was just, I just found it very interesting. But yeah, we're up to date with Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, and so this latest one with Dr. Andy Galpin, I was really excited about because one, I really haven't listened to him much before in the past, and this is a 6-part series that really dives into like all aspects of your fitness. So like, of course, I want to listen to scientific research on fitness and ways of your body and the best way you can optimize fitness and stuff like that. And a lot of times in these, like with Dr. Lane Norton, I learned a lot about new things that were out there, and also validated a lot of why we do things from a scientific research perspective. So these are all like really cool things. But the reason why we're talking about this today is, a lot of people struggle with, do I do resistance training? Do I do cardio? Do I do only one, only the other? Is it good to do both? And if I do both, what's my objectives and goals of what I want to accomplish? And I think one thing that, hopefully you realize from listening to all this podcast is that our bodies are extremely adaptive to our surroundings, regardless of what we're doing. If we're just living a sedentary lifestyle and we just sit there and we never work out, our bodies adapt to that. We grow bigger. We get along day to day based off of that. We store more fat, and our bodies, adapt to that situation. And this is, millions of years of evolution that our body is so impressive to be able to do certain things like that. And think about it this way. Let's go back, 500,000 years, et cetera. And, there was different types of situations that we're involved in. And if you think about genetics, where we come from, why genetics play a major role in what we do, let's just say you were, in a more of a non-developed country and, you had to forage for food. Well, you most likely needed cardiovascular health to be able to run and sprint or have long endurance for long periods of time to be able to hunt for food. You probably also needed to be very strong in order to kill a bear or kill other animals in order to get that food. You probably needed to be able to chop trees down, which is also both cardiovascular and, muscular type of endurance there. And so you're most likely going to have a very, lean build with muscle, right? And that's just based on the nature of your surroundings. However, if you're building a pyramid, for example, or you're sitting there, lifting stones all day long or building these massive structures, you're going to be a really massive dude, that probably doesn't have a lot of cardiovascular strength because it's not needed for your body. So our bodies adapt in different ways. And, what the science is showing now is that there's healthy ways of doing things. There's non-healthy ways of doing things. But what's clear is that a combination of cardiovascular health and work plus resistance training is the best pairing for almost everybody from a health and longevity perspective. And they define longevity in a number of different ways, but cardiovascular being one of them. But also, when you look at longevity studies, bone density, muscle strength, grip strength are the three main criteria that they typically look for when it comes to longevity studies. And the more muscle mass you can keep as you age, the more bone density you have as you age. Obviously, fragile bones equate to bone breaks, infections, disease, etc. And then grip strength, falling, being able to pick yourself up, catching yourself, those types of things, you live longer. So, what the studies are showing now are, very much so a balanced way of doing cardiovascular work, having a strong heart, the oxygenation levels, VO2 max being a big component of that, and being able to measure longevity from a cardiovascular perspective, as well as, your muscle mass. So something in the middle is typically what is recommended. Now, it doesn't mean, being a bodybuilder is a bad thing or being, just a straight cardio is a bad thing. It's just a balance of the two seems to support more longevity aspects. So I'll leave it there before we get into why we disagreed with this podcast and why I'm not a huge fan of Dr. Andy Galpin, but go ahead.
I have been totally distracted. I'm going to order myself a grip strength tester because they were talking about it at the end and they were talking about ways to test it and stuff like that. And a total side note for that, I think as a special episode, you and I should go through all the tests that they spoke about one time at some point this year and record the whole thing and sort of see where we're at from all these strength levels, VO2 max, cardio, endurance, all sorts of things, and grip strength.
See, I already took it and it told me I was going to live to 700. So I thought that was kind of cool. So
because of your grip strength.
That's right. My grip strength.
Yeah. But I think, overall, I find it interesting what they were talking about, like sort of the evolution of training. And, there was a lot of sort of, I think it was the 50s, 60s, they talked about the endurance stuff and people running longer distances and, cycling events and marathons and stuff like that. And then they talked about sort of the late 70s and how everything sort of fell in line with just the timing of everything, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the pumping iron and the bodybuilding and stuff like that. Like, people realize that yes, okay, they could do the sort of strengthen, or they could do the endurance stuff and the cardio based stuff to sort of feel better and get healthier and potentially lose weight. But the weightlifting side of things and the bodybuilding side of things, you could actually change how you look. Like, you could physically go and change how you look. And I think that what they said was, show me one person who wanted to be stronger, and I'll show you 10 people who want to look stronger. Now, I yes, want to look strong, but I also want to be strong as well. But it was just interesting to sort of, like, I guess, a perspective that I never really thought of about, like, the timing of things and how everything sort of came about and how training has changed over the years.
Well, and I think, resistance training gets a lot of bad, I think, perception, because, it absolutely can be abused, right? You look at bodybuilders dying in their 50s and 60s. Well, yeah, that's, 30 years of abuse to their bodies, and their hearts just can't take it. So cardiovascular health is a big component of that, right? But you have, a lot of bodybuilders that live to 80, 90, 100 years old as well. So, it really depends on how well you've actually taken care of yourself. And there's no question you could be an unhealthy bodybuilder, but there's no question you can also be an unhealthy runner as well. So, these things are not exclusive to one another. And it's that balanced approach that I think is really important in making informed decisions about what you want to accomplish and what's healthy to do. A good example, I just got my blood work back just this week. And, what I always focus on is, am I improving my biomarkers, for various things? So if I see an area that needs help, for example, like I need micronutrient supplementation in magnesium, I'll take more magnesium as part of my supplementation routine. Same thing for my lab. So, this time around, I was really happy because my kidney and liver enzymes went down substantially. They're already within normal ranges, but they went down substantially. I have been taking some TUDCA and some milk thistle stuff, which helps with, liver cleansing. And so my kidney levels and my liver levels were down. Again, not in dangerous levels, but I'm improving those. And those are, obviously thing that I want to take care of as I get older. Same thing for my LDL and HDLs. HDLs improved, LDLs improved. So, ApoB, which is, a really great biomarker indicator for cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, for example. Those are things that I always take a look at from that side to try to always improve, but I'm making health informed decisions about how I'm going and doing things. Now, we talked about my 5-minute mile brag here, but that's because I'm saying that because I focus on cardiovascular health very importantly, but I also focus very heavily on resistance training, and resistance training is number one most important to me. I want more muscle mass. I care less about running a 5-minute mile, to be honest. I just want to be stronger. Now, it's a delicate balance between everything that you're accomplishing, but if your goals, are to have a relatively lean, body type, but still have muscle mass, obviously that desired look of, being lean and having muscle, there are some definite things that you can do to maintain that physique and slowly build, muscle over time. What I didn't like about this podcast with Dr. Andy that really kind of threw me off was, he referenced his scientific studies, right? And he was empirical about his studies being basically the only way that you can do things. And, to me, and he even contradicted science in general, because he said a lot of the studies are based off of cognitive biases that you have, and then trying to fit the data to that specific thing, right? And then he goes along and telling you, well, this is the way to do it, and this is the only way to do it. And I was really kind of put off by that because, what he doesn't realize is that everybody's goals are different from what you're trying to accomplish. And I understand what he's trying to say. So his big concept was, things like CrossFit are kind of the best solution for you. And, I would argue, well, everybody I know in CrossFit is always hurt. Now, I'm not going to say CrossFit's bad, because it is a great, cardiovascular / muscle building type of thing. But at the end of the day, like, if you're not doing things properly, like with anything, like resistance training, anything else, you're going to have injuries. But his whole point is that, listen, you can do weightlifting plus cardiovascular in the same session type of thing, like, doing high exertion reps with, deadlifts and, all these other things, and exertion type movements and explosive movements that, get your heart rate moving and also build muscle at the same time. And those full body exercises are what you should be focusing on from a longevity perspective, which will help both cardio and weights. And I agree with that. But then he started to basically crap on isolation, training for muscle groups. And I'm like, what? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever.
I think the way that he put it was that we moved away from motion. So he talked about like cycling and running and things like that. We moved away from motion and we moved towards like more isolation stuff. So like, compound movements, or, even just whatever way you're going to train biceps or whatever else. And I think he said that what he saw in that was there were a lot of injuries because of this. And that's whenever he started talking about CrossFit, I was like, whoa, are you trying to say that, and again, not to shit on CrossFit by any stretch of the imagination, because I respect athletes and it's serious hard work, but it's like, again, everybody I know who does CrossFit has some sort of injury or is trying to get out of CrossFit because they're all fucked up because of all the injuries. And like, you can't say that we moved away from motion to this thing and there was a lot of injuries, so now everybody's doing this thing that has motion and these movements. Everybody's all fucked up that does CrossFit. Majority, right? We're all taped up and stuck together.
And I think this goes back to the argument that we've always preached this on the podcast, is that when you're doing an exercise, you need to learn the movement first. You need to do it properly. You need to be comfortable with the weight, and then you gradually move up after that once you're doing it safe and sound. And that is a big part of resistance training, making sure you don't have these injuries. And, we talked about this. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I have recurring injuries. I have, a left shoulder issue and a lower left back issue. And we have built exercises around those that allow me to not re-injure myself and continue. And it wasn't a lifting injury. It was, historical injuries from when I was in the military. So, these are things that we have to live through in our bodies. But to say that, isolation movements and resistance training creates injuries is such a facade, because, people do lifting their entire life and are perfectly fine with that. I mean, you have 60, 70, 80-year-old bodybuilders that are perfectly fine doing the exact same movements they've been doing their entire life. We have a lot of data, a lot of science behind it. And there's a lot of studies that show resistance training is absolutely amazing for your body. Why would you have a contradictory aspect towards that when all the science actually backs that up? So, I just think it was a very myopic view of what he was talking about in all of that. And by the way, you can also do heavy lifting and cardio. I know it's hard to believe, but you can do both of those,
That was a big realization for me towards the end of last year. I could do both. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I think the thing, if I think about it, he obviously deals with high level athletes. So I would imagine that a lot of the stuff he's talking about is from an athlete perspective. Now, in the title of the podcast, it doesn't say anything about athletes. It says how to assess and improve all aspects of your fitness. Nothing related to athletes at all. So I think, from what he's saying, and I think they were talking about the leg extension test, and he said to Andrew Huberman, can you do one rep of your body weight at leg extension? The first thing that pissed me off, I was like, well, what machine am I doing it on? Because they're all going to be different. And the second thing, I was like, I don't think I could do one rep at 210 pounds or like 95 years. I don't think I could do that. But he was almost like shocked. Like you could tell there was a shock, like he couldn't do it. He's like, you can't do it, like double leg. He was really trying to justify it. I was like, you can't just assume that everybody can do these things if you're dealing with like day-to-day people and not athletes.
Well, and one of the other ones, that, not to nitpick everything that was said there, but Huberman didn't correct him multiple occasions. Even like he's talked about this specific topic a number of times. Dr. Lane Norton's talked about this many times. He's had Dr. Peter Attia talk about this many times. There's a number of studies on this, but if you train a muscle group consistently without the ability for it to recover, it's going to be counterproductive to your goals. It's gonna break down in injuries. What he said was, and Huberman was like, yeah, kind of like the concept of not being able to train the same muscle group the next day. And Dr. Andy was like, yeah, that's total BS. You could keep training, every single day or whatever. I'm like, Huberman, are you going to correct him on that? Like, that's not accurate. So I was really like, I don't know, man. You kind of lost me on this podcast. And there's 6 episodes that I got to listen to of this guy. I'm not sure I'm going to be in it, but I will say, breaking down the stuff that we didn't like, but what you can take away from that is, full body exercises are phenomenal for your body, regardless if you're doing cardiovascular work with it or just lifting. It's a phenomenal exercise for your body. So if you're only lifting 2 or 3 times a week, full body exercises are the way to go, because you're going to hit the most amount of muscle groups. It's going to be most intensive on your body, and you get the most benefit for that and build muscle over time. However, if your goal is to maximize muscle hypertrophy, to gain as much muscle as possible, then you're going to want to focus on isolation type movements and exercises typically. And it doesn't mean you still can't do full body exercises, but your rep ranges and how many times you hit those muscles will typically change based on the data that we know of our bodies. There's a lot of data on rep ranges. We talked about this in previous podcasts. Trying to get to a certain number to allow you to maximize muscle hypertrophy and protein synthesis and ATP within our mTOR production within our bodies. So these are all things that we have to consider. What are our goals? Do we just, do we want, if your goal is, you're already overweight and you want to shed the pounds and maintain muscle, I would probably do, 3 hard, full body exercises a week that incorporated cardiovascular type training, get some steps in, and that would probably be what my week looks like, right? From a cardiovascular and lifting perspective. I wouldn't sit there and be sprinting on treadmills or doing anything like that. I would just get out there and move. And in my movements that I'm doing, keep it high intensity. So my heart rate's up, I'm sweating, I'm burning calories, I'm going to it. My cardiovascular stuff is good. I'm in the, in an elevated heart rate zone. So my heart's actually working productively. Those are going to be some of your best results you could probably experience. But again, if you want to try to get as much muscle as you can and also maintain leanness and things of that effect, then you're going to want to lift a little bit more in those muscle groups. And it doesn't mean that you can't do still 3 times a week, but you might do a little bit of a different split and a much different type of workout than the high intensity ones you typically see out there.
Yeah, I think, yes, there was things that I definitely will take from it. A lot of the testing stuff interested me, like potentially not something I would use with clients day to day, but like I said, something that you and I could potentially just to sort of see and things like that. The other thing that I learned from the podcast was Andrew Huberman's podcast would probably be at least 45 minutes shorter if we didn't have all those fucking sponsored ads every 2 minutes in between.
And he puts them in all the thing. I'm like, I gotta fast forward again. So yeah. He's taken that cue from Joe Rogan, I think. So like you get all these like basically advertisements halfway through the podcast at the beginning, at the end, in the middle. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, but that like some of the test stuff I do think is good, and I think the series will frustrate us, but I do think there will be definitely some stuff in it that we can take from it that we can sort of use. And I'm not against that. And I think overall, probably the conclusion is that, number one, you need to decide what your goal is and what you want to achieve. So, if it's fat loss, then focus on fat loss. If you do want to have some sort of endurance, then focus on some sort of endurance. If you do want to get big and strong, then focus on getting big and strong. Like, work out what you want to do and then essentially build your training around that. I think that's probably the best. It's not a one size fits all. I think I've been saying that my entire coaching career. Like, it never is that. You need to work out what you want to achieve and then sort of work out what you need to do from that point.
By the way, there's nothing wrong with changing what you want to do down the road too. Like, what's great about this is, again, our bodies will morph to what we want to do. And that's, I think, the coolest part about all of this is that literally we can shape ourselves in whatever image we want to. Now, obviously, I'm stuck with being 6'4". I can't change that. I have green eyes. I can't change that. Well, maybe I can with some contacts, but I can change my hair. I can change my color of my hair, I guess. But at the end of the day, genetics play a role in certain things, right? But at the end of the day, like when it comes to the physique of our body and how we want to look, we control that. We control almost every aspect of that. We can make ourselves look lean. We can make ourselves look big. We can make ourselves look strong and massive. I mean, we can be overweight and massively, unhealthy. There's so many different things that we can accomplish. And it's just a matter of putting the effort into one way or the other. And that's what I think I find so fascinating about this. And it's just those tweaks that you do that make a big difference. Like deload weeks, for example. If I wasn't training with you, I would never do a deload week ever. But they're so necessary. Like, I'll tell you, my energy levels of doing my lift that day on Wednesday, even Wednesday night, which are almost always shit exercises for me because I'm always tired at the end of the day. And I've had a long day of meetings, long day at the airport, dealing with people, fires going off here and there. And so I get back home and I'm tired. I go home, I hang out with the kids, everything's great, have a nice meal, wait about an hour or two, go downstairs, and I was ready I was foaming from the mouth, ready to hit those weights, and I was just PR'd on a bunch of stuff. And, just a little one, just a little workout, just hit the biceps, just a little bit, just like one exercise. But those little things that we can tweak along our ways can make big differences. And, nutrition, the pillars that we talk about on mindset, nutrition, lifestyle, and your overall physique and body, like those are all the things that we have control over 100%.
Yeah. And I think, I don't want to say we were right, but I think the more that we sort of delve in,
you're right.
The more we delve into the other podcasts and the science and stuff like that, for me, I don't listen to anything or anyone and take everything that they say as gospel, and that's what I need to go and do. And this applies for anybody who's listening to us. Like, I'm not saying that you need to do everything that we say or that I do things the right way. And even I was talking today about tempo training and about how it fucks everybody off, but I'm not saying that that's the best way to do it. I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it. And I had an interesting conversation with JG about 2 hours ago. And he was very frustrated with the tempo stuff at the start because he had to sort of reassess where his strength levels were. And I could tell there was a lot of frustration in it. But the one thing that we sort of came off the back of the call was it really forced him, like he almost couldn't fuck up his form because he had to really focus on how he was moving and he was a lot more in control. And that's the biggest lesson that he took from, the initial sort of 10-week block and whatever else. So I'm not saying that that's the right way to do it, but I find it a very good way to sort of teach people how to move and actually control and contract the muscles. But as I'm saying, I'm not saying that you need to take everything that Dave and I say as gospel and that's what you need to go and do. You need to take the bits that suit you and what you're trying to do. And that's what I do with other podcasts and take inspiration and try things out on myself, try things out on Dave specifically, and try things out on other clients and think, oh, do you know what? I actually really like the idea of this. And there's a lot of things that I have changed my mind on over time, which is absolutely fine. And I think that is sort of shows, number one, how things change, how our knowledge, how the science, how the data, and all those things change over time, and sort of being okay with being wrong or admitting that there are other or better ways to do things is absolutely fine.
And it's interesting, everybody's different. So everybody's goals are different. Everybody's bodies are different, what they can accomplish. But, at the end of the day, we control that. So but within our, genetics, it's funny because you mentioned, form and technique. Every time I think of form and technique, I think of Helmy and his deadlifts, the most awkward looking deadlifts ever. And he always gets shit, on Instagram for his deadlifts. But hey, are you deadlifting 700 pounds? No. So, but some people just work through what they want to do in their body, and Helmy's deadlift, everything else is obviously 100% spot on, but for his body and how he moves and operates it, his deadlift looks absolutely atrocious. It looks insane.
It looks awful.
Yeah,
and actually,
it looks awful.
His latest YouTube video was he went through and read through all his hate comments on YouTube, on TikTok, and Instagram. I haven't watched yet, but I would imagine that the deadlifts did come up because they.
Oh, it had to come up.
They are awful. They are awful.
They are awful. I mean, he's lifting with his whole rounded back and everything.
But I mean, like you said, I can't.
He's a freaking monster. Yeah. He's a monster. I mean, I'm not going to critique that. Okay. Yeah. In fact, Helmy, should I be rounding my back?
Is that the secret?
Is that what I need to do?
What we're missing right on?
Is that the secret?
Yeah.
But again, we all have our things, but at the end of the day, we just have to have a vision and goal and start to execute on that goal to be successful with it. And that's why I didn't like the Dr. Andy stuff, because it was like you had to be in this box. You had to do things this way, and it had to be done the way that my research had said, even though there's other ways of tackling that research and looking at that research, other research that's out there that's plenty valid, and everybody else uses it as well. So, I was just a little bit put off by that. I mean, if you want a really good podcast to listen to, the Huberman Labs one with Dr. Lane Norton was really good. I love that one because the guy is a bodybuilder, and he's a natural bodybuilder. At least that's what he claims. So, but what's nice about seeing that is, everything that he's talking about is science-based routines. And it was funny because he could be a dick on social media, like a really big one. Like the guy just has no F's to give when it comes to responding back to people. And you can tell. And it was funny because he was talking about inclusion training, which is, BFR is blood flow restriction. So you basically put, these bands around your arms and, causes blood flow to be restricted to your muscle groups. And it helps you isolate and focus on muscle groups. And people are like, what the hell would you do that? That sounds dangerous. What it actually does is it cuts oxygen levels off to your muscles, which causes your muscles to have to work twice as hard or 10 times as hard. And what science has shown is that with blood flow restriction to your muscle groups, you can actually gain substantially more muscle hypertrophy, i.e. muscle mass, by doing blood flow restrictions as a thing. And he's been a big advocate of that. And it's funny because you introduced me to BFRs years ago before it was even cool and before Chris Hemmingsworth was using it and everybody else. But, BFRs are something that is a great tool, especially for days where you maybe already hit a muscle group pretty hard and you want to focus more on the size and the muscle hypertrophy side of the house. So, someone commented on, Dr. Lane Norton did this video on blood flow restrictions, and the response back was, yeah, that looks horrible for you and unhealthy. This is the most stupid thing I've ever seen posted by somebody. And he responds back, and quotes the tweet and everything. He's like, I'm sorry, but your feelings mean absolutely nothing to me. Read the effing science, you idiots. He's like, this is what it does. And he's like, I'm done dealing with people's feelings. Your feelings mean nothing. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, okay. Yeah. But I mean, what he's not saying isn't wrong. At the end of the day, there are scientific studies that show blood flow restrictions, one, are perfectly safe, and two, have the ability to do, especially it's used very heavily for injury recovery. In fact, Yuri, I was just on his podcast recently, and Yuri's talking about how he used blood flow restrictions for his recovery aspects, which is used very heavily in the medical industry for when you have an injury. So we have tons of data on this, tons of studies. And what he's basically saying is like, listen, based on your goals and your necessities, that may not make sense to you, but don't sit there and say it's not safe or that it doesn't do anything or that it's not worth it, because you have no idea what you're talking about, because I literally know all the science behind it. And this is what it means. And I'm not saying all the science is always right, but like, this is probably one of the easier ones to make a decision on this. And, it's just interesting to see him kind of respond to those people.
Yeah, but I can imagine for him it's frustrating. Do you know what I mean? Like, he spent years, I think he mentioned in actually Dr. Aria's podcast about he was the one that introduced it, or he mentioned it first or whatever, some claim to fame I heard. But, he spent years and years with the science and research, and then someone just on Twitter is like, no, looks stupid. And you're like, fuck, yeah. Actually, and I don't know if you did, because we spoke about this, after that podcast, I signed up for his rep stuff, the research, explained, and practical summaries. There's a lot of really cool stuff in that, and the most recent one is will cardio kill your gains? I haven't read it yet, but I think like even just questions like that, to sort of look at the research and how it explains it and stuff like that, like that sort of shit excites me, and sort of it allows me to answer other people's questions and clients' questions, and actually be able to back things up whenever people are like, no, you can't do cardio because your biceps will fall off or whatever the fuck's shit.
Yeah, it's again, and this is also something I would caveat folks with as well is,
if you're trying to not fall off if you do
well, but we get this very often in the Discord server. We have a scientific research section, and I try to do a lot of analysis on things that may benefit people that are looking to optimize their bodies, whether it's through supplementation, testosterone replacement, peptides, whatever, things that have good science behind it, that are safe and effective, for our bodies. And it's like, I'll get questions on things like SARMs, for example. And, I'm not knocking anything. What you want to do is your choice. And, but I'm not a huge fan of SARMs because they don't have a lot of data and human studies on them, and the efficacy and safety of them aren't there. So I typically am like, well, hey, like go for it, but it's kind of at your own risk when you go and do it. And there's not a lot of science behind it. Same thing for like supplementation. You'll see like these test boosters, right? And there'll be like one scientific research paper that was done on mice, has nothing to do with humans. Even though mice and humans are very similar in nature, there's many times where they don't, equate to one-to-ones in any way, shape, or form. I mean, in fact, a lot of the times they don't. And so, a question like,
yes, shit, like, I don't know about you, but if it's been done on a mouse, I'm not right. The guy for that. Like,
I'm good. Yeah. And, it's interesting because, I had someone recently ask about a specific supplement, and they're like, hey, can you look at this research paper? So I looked at it, and the first thing it says is, by taking this supplement, has a 20% increase in testosterone levels in men. Okay. I'm like, oh, interesting. Oh, first of all, I've heard of this before. I see it in test boosters. I've done really research. I for some reason, in my mind, I threw it out the window because something I've researched before in the past told me not to do this. It's the same for like Tongan Ali and a few of the other ones out there for test boosters. But, I started doing some research on it, and you look at the study, and it was a really small sample size of humans, and there was no resistance training in it. And you look at all the later studies, and it showed that there was nominal, i.e. not much of a testosterone boost in people that didn't lift, and a large reduction in testosterone for people that did lift weights. And I was like, yeah, you don't want to be taking that, but if you just read that one study, you'd be like, oh, I see you take the supplement to get more testosterone. You're like, no. Take a step back and take a look at the other research that's come out since then. This wasn't done, let's just say 2014. Have there been any follow-up studies in humans, things that actually make an impact? And is there doctors that have published their analysis and overview of what this actually means, to the industry or to the field? And is this something to take? One of the things I take is phosphatic acid prior to lifting. There's been studies that show taking phosphatic acid allows for better protein synthesis, which is spawned off of what's called mTOR production. So I take five pills of phosphatic acid prior to lifting because of the research that I've seen out there. Now, at the end of the day, phosphatic acid is extremely safe. Lots of clinical studies on it, not just specifically for mTOR production, but for other things. So I feel comfortable taking that supplement because it's well researched. And whether or not I'm getting the mTOR benefits, and getting increased, I don't know. But the studies seem to show that. So I try it, but you just got to be really careful with what is said off of one study or one research topic or somebody saying to do this or that. because a lot of times it may not be accurate. It may just be a small myopic view of it, may not have clinical human trials in it. And those are the things that we need to be really focused on, especially in this age, because the supplement industry is really not regulated very well at all. And a bunch of stuff just thrown all over the place, especially, if it's like a natural ingredient.
Yeah, I think number one on that is trying to find a reliable source to look at studies, because you can just Google to get the study and fuck knows what's going to come up. So I think, again, having that section in the Discord where there is actual reliable studies that you can actually read and go, okay, right, this actually makes sense or doesn't make sense to do that. I think having the right place to go for resources is definitely important, because you can get lost in it. And again, the internet is the best and the worst thing in the world, but it's just knowing the right place to go for these things.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, the information that we have available, not everybody has access to a doctor, not everybody has access to, a researcher that has gone through all of this or knows the ins and outs of that. Our PCPs are typically reactive in nature.
Or even how to read a research paper like that,
right,
in itself is a skill.
It has taken me a long time and a lot of studying to be able to understand, like, receptors, for example, and how they impact our bodies, like androgen receptors versus, others, and how dopamine and all this other stuff works. And then you have to go to a study, and then that basically breaks out in terms that you should probably be in the field for. It takes a long time to interpret those in a way that is successful. And luckily, I have family members that are doctors. I have a number of others, so I'll send these research papers out, like, hey,
what does this mean?
What does this mean? Like, is this in an area that I'm familiar with? And so it's great to be able to have resources available and things to that effect, but not everybody has those. So, just be really careful with what you're putting into your body, because good chances is probably not great for yourself. And in copious amounts, could cause some major downfalls in your health, cancer, things to that effect in the future. You never know.
Yeah. The one thing that I want to sort of finish up on, because I had a conversation with Jason yesterday, and he bought himself a sauna for Christmas. And I know that you talk about sauna quite a lot in recovery. And in his own words, I'm pretty sure he said he was amazed about the difference in terms of progress, or in terms of recovery. And, we talk about the 1% and getting the 1% here and there. But obviously, because he has a lot of the data and he uses Whoop and everything else, he says, like, how much positive impact using the sauna on a regular basis has had on his recovery. So obviously, he uses Whoop, and he's like, on a regular week before he started using it, there was maybe 2 or 3 days in the week he was in the red in terms of recovery. Yesterday we were 19 days into the year, and he had only had 2 in that 19-day period. And he said that he has seen between 30 and 40% increase in his recovery on Whoop as a whole, and an increase in his, not in the amount of sleep that he's getting, but in the efficiency of sleep that he's getting. So I was like, just from having that, like, I know that you've mentioned it quite a lot, but whatever, in having that conversation with him alone, I was like, I need to get one of these, because that in itself, and having the data and being able to go, do you know what? Okay, this is the data that I had before this. And the only thing that he has changed is using the sauna on a regular basis. So that backs you up. I'm going to say you were right on that one.
There's some really great data. What's interesting, there isn't a lot of data on infrared saunas yet, but the concepts seem to be the same from, steam saunas versus infrared saunas. The health benefits were primarily out of Sweden, which, is a big sauna culture. And they saw, substantial amounts of recovery, natural human growth hormone production, ability for cardiovascular health, calorie burn. There's so many different types of benefits that go into, things like sauna that allow us to reap those benefits in many ways. So, it's still, to be determined on whether or not infrared saunas get hot enough for those benefits. But everything that we've seen from at least the early data shows that it absolutely does have a major impact, including the human growth hormone ability. So human growth hormone, naturally produced in our bodies help substantially with recovery, endurance, general mood and feel, repair, a lot of stuff that goes on in that. So, some good things from that side. But I'll tell you, I try to hit the sauna at least 3 times a week. And there is a noticeable difference in my recovery as I'm going to do it. And I feel like I try to typically do it at night, and I feel phenomenal after I'm done. I feel like rested. I feel like, really just calm, and I feel really good. And then next morning I wake up, I'm refreshed, ready to go and hit the ground running. So I can't emphasize, saunas enough. I think they're such a good treasure trove for recovery, repair, and everything else. So, yeah.
Good. I'm not going to order one. I'll be in the sauna doing my grip
Dave's gonna be like, Kay's gonna be like, you need to stop talking to Dave. Like, we're done. You know.
Yeah. No, true. That's true. Right. We did it.
Hey, solid podcast. We did it. Solid podcast. Well, we got another one coming up next week. We're actually recording 2 next week, right? Or are we doing 2 or 3?
Yeah, we're doing 2. I mean, you need to stop letting people know when we're doing it. Like, people think we do it week by week, you know?
Well, I mean, we try to do week by week, but sometimes obviously travel and things like that come up, but we try to do it week by week. But we appreciate everybody listening to us. Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's Hacking Your Health podcast. Check us out on Discord, Twitter, all the various social media campaigns, our website, wehack.health. Seriously, come join our Discord server. It is a great community of people that are helping and uplifting one another. Even if you don't like Discord, there's some great stuff in there for people to talk to. And we're all just, kind of talking about our struggles, our experiences, knowledge. You have questions. It's just a really judgment-free type of place that you come to and hang out and learn more about yourself and help motivate you. So it's just discord.gg/hackingyourhealth.
We Hack Health. Everything's We Hack Health. Yes.
Okay, you're right. Sorry, I got confused. Yes, We Hack Health. Discord.gg/WeHackHealth. So thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll catch you again next week. Later all.
See you next week.